Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about my Week 10 quarterback starter sits for the 2019 fantasy football season. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about news around the National Football League as it pertains to fantasy football, then talking about the matchups at the quarterback position going into Week 10, then going over my top 16 quarterback rankings on the week. Yes, this is on Thursday, right before the Thursday night matchup, so yes, there will be players in said game in today's rankings. So before we begin, let me remind all of you, if you guys haven't yet already, click that subscribe button, join the community. Also click that bell notification button to stay up to date on my latest content. And if you like today's video, don't forget to click the like button. Hey everybody, how's everybody doing? All right, so we're talking about quarterbacks. We're talking about fantasy football. Again, a couple pieces of news really quickly. But before that, Sunday mornings, 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Do not forget live streams here on the channel. Also, Patreon link is down in the description for those of you looking to get all of your 2019 fantasy football questions answered. Support me on the channel and you get the services. Anyway, so let's talk about a couple pieces of news, a couple injury news that is really relevant going into this week. So we talked about AJ Green yesterday potentially playing and where I might have him if in fact he plays. Well, he had a setback today and he is officially out for Week 10. So AJ Green, again, going to be out. What a surprise. AJ Green injury history? Not really too much of a surprise. For those of you who have held on to him, you might as well just keep holding on to him and hope. So at this point, it's a struggle, but we have to deal with that. Moving on, another player from the AFC North that will be dealing with an injury and will potentially miss this week, James Conner. A couple pieces of information came out that he is not expected to play this week, despite the optimism of Mike Tomlin earlier in the week. So that makes Jalen Samuels a big play this week, another top 24 running back in a PPR format. The guy could be an incredible play. Again, 13 targets, 13 receptions just last week. This is a guy that has had a lot of work in the passing game, and as the only running back left in this backfield with Connor out, with Trey Edmonds out, with Benny Snell out, it only helps. I mean, yes, they're playing against the Rams, but as a Rams fan, I know they can't cover running backs in the passing game. Other than that, a couple pieces of information. As you can see to the left of me, I expect Patrick Mahomes will play this week. Had a full participation on Wednesday's practice. Haven't gotten any information on whether or not he's practiced today, but I'm assuming it's going to trend in the correct direction. He's going to potentially play. I heard somebody in the comment section tell me that the likelihood of Patrick Mahomes coming back after 21 days is very likely because within the first 21 days after dislocating your kneecap, there is a potential of reoccurring injury within 21 days. After that, there's like a 16% chance. Some stats were thrown at me. So there's a potential he plays this week against the Tennessee Titans, which would be great. Malcolm Butler dealing with some injuries. Maybe he can go again and take advantage of that. Sammy Watkins would definitely get a boost. We didn't see him on yesterday's episode, but if Patrick Mahomes is there, I like him as a play this coming week. Outside of that, Lamar Jackson was not participating in practice today. I don't know if that was non-related to injury or not. We'll get more information on that, but I do expect him to play this Sunday against the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't expect him to have any setbacks of any sort of injury because we haven't heard anything. But if they're holding something secret, then that'd be really pertinent information to know. And I'll keep you guys updated to that before Sunday morning starts. So let's go into the matchups at the quarterback position going into Week 10. Now that we've covered all of the little tidbits of news on said day, let's go ahead and talk about these. Starting off with number one, here we go. The Arizona Cardinals giving up the most points to opposing quarterbacks in the last 2 weeks. Drew Brees, 3 passing touchdowns. The week after, Jimmy Garoppolo, 4 passing touchdowns. It's no surprise that the Arizona Cardinals are getting destroyed through the air. Patrick Peterson has not looked the same, and to be honest, yes, the Arizona Cardinals have gotten better at stopping the run, but I think that's mainly because teams can just easily pass on them. Who gets to play against them? Well, the thumbnail himself, Jameis Winston, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. Should be a great formula for success. That's a beautiful matchup. Moving on, the Oakland Raiders, number 2, giving up the second most points to opposing quarterbacks on a weekly basis. Again, this is a team that Aaron Rodgers completely destroyed. Matthew Stafford had a pretty good week last week. Deshaun Watson had a pretty good week. I think Phillip Rivers is in line to have another good week himself. Obviously, he wasn't great last week, but he didn't need to be great for them to win that game. They dominated early on defense. They ran the ball very well. And I think this week could be a good week for Phillip Rivers if, in fact, they want to go ahead and test that secondary with the receiving studs of Hunter Henry, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen this week. Moving on, the Atlanta Falcons, another team that is struggling heavily in the secondary. Drew Brees is going to be able to take advantage of that. He's my number 1 quarterback on the week. We'll talk about a little bit more, but it should be an easy pickings matchup. Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the opposite side. Again, Tampa Bay and Arizona, both teams that give up a lot of points to opposing quarterbacks. Should be a higher scoring matchup between the two teams. Kyler Murray in line for a pretty good week, in my opinion. Moving on to Miami Dolphins. I think Jacoby Brissett could potentially play. If in fact he does, then he would move into the top 16. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But as of right now, I'm anticipating a potential Brian Hoyer play on said week, but we'll just have to keep updated, and rankings are always subject to change, so we'll go over that in a bit. Moving on to Detroit Lions, Mitch Trubisky, I don't think he'll be able to take advantage of that. Cincinnati Bengals, Lamar Jackson will be able to certainly take advantage of said matchup. The Texans are on a bye week. The New York Giants get to be subject to Sam Darnold maybe throwing interceptions to them, because why not? And then we have a bunch of other mid-tier teams. Let's talk about the more tougher matchups at the position. The Carolina Panthers supposedly not giving up a lot of points to opposing quarterbacks. That's mainly because in the last couple of weeks, they can't stop the run. Nobody has to pass against them. So Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams should both be great this week. Aaron Rodgers hopefully will find himself a couple touchdowns to a Devontae Adams and get him back into the offense properly in Lambeau. But again, I don't think that's a main thing about the secondary for Carolina has not been good. They've given up a lot of yards in the passing game. It's just their run stopping has not been great. That's why they've kind of balanced out to them the number 23 spot. Moving on to Baltimore Ravens, playing good against the secondary. Their secondary has been great. Again, they get to play against a rookie quarterback. That's going to be tough for Ryan Finley. The Packers, they're good in the secondary, can't stop the run. We saw that last week. The Chargers can't stop the run, good against the good secondary. Chicago, another one of these teams, bad against the run, good secondary. The Cowboys, they're a pretty good defense overall. Buffalo's a pretty good defense overall, except they can't stop the run. This is just a reoccurring thing. And then we have those studs on the bottom. We'll talk about the 49ers because I saw a stat. We'll talk about the 49ers on Sunday, okay? We'll talk about them on Sunday. How about a little teaser for that right now? All right, so let's talk about my top 8 quarterbacks on the week, right? Who do I really think is going to have a monster week? It's going to be Drew Brees at my number 1 spot. And it's not by accident. Drew Brees, for those of you who went and picked him up, if in fact somebody dropped him in your league and you'd listened to me a couple a couple weeks back, and you went and picked him up off of waivers, and you did yourself that favor, well, you're going to reap the rewards of that and potentially win a fantasy championship because of Drew Brees. The matchups coming, in the next couple weeks are all NFC South matchups. Drew Brees absolutely is incredible in said matchups. Just going back and looking at last year's performances against the Atlanta Falcons, a defense that really hasn't really changed. Sure, they've gotten a couple players back from injury, but are still very much so lacking in the secondary and in the pass rush department. They can't really cover anybody. Drew Brees last season against the Atlanta Falcons scored 9 touchdowns and only threw 1 interception. That's correct. 9 touchdowns, 1 interception. 9 total touchdowns. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, but still, 9 touchdowns. The dude was slinging it and getting it done, scoring a lot of points against his defense. And I don't think that's going to change this week. I think Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara coming back, them coming off of a bye week. You're getting back Jared Cook. You are a more healthy group than when you were, a couple weeks back where you had no Alvin Kamara, no Drew Brees, no Jared Cook. We have finally gotten back to where this is the team before the season I expected to win the Super Bowl. There is a reason on that predictions video I made, Drew Brees is on the thumbnail, because I expect this team to win the Super Bowl, and I expect them to be able to take out the garbage against a team like that, especially against a secondary and defense like the Falcons. Drew Brees is my number 1 on the week. Moving on to Patrick Mahomes, my number 2. I expect him to return this week, play against the Tennessee Titans, and I expect him, yes, this defense is pretty good for the Titans, but I expect him to absolutely dominate. Patrick Mahomes is an incredible player. We've seen in the last couple weeks that Matt Moore could still lead this offense. But if you inject a quarterback at the level of Patrick Mahomes into this offense with so many reliable pieces, so many athletic monsters, it's just going to be it's just going to be an easy matchup, I think, for them on the week. If Patrick Mahomes does play, he's my number two, and he has to start for you. Moving on to number 3, Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, last time he played against the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 6, ran for 152 rushing yards. That's correct. The Cincinnati Bengals cannot stop the run. So why not just let Lamar Jackson run all over them? That's exactly what he did. And that's what he's going to continue to do. When they get down to the red zone, sure, there is a Gus Edwards. There is a Mark Andrews potentially in the play action. There is a Mark Ingram. Sure, that exists. But Lamar Jackson is dominating in the red zone rushing attempt department, getting rushing touchdowns consistently. This is a guy that is just dominating up and down the field. This team is on fire, and the Cincinnati Bengals won't be able to slow them down. He's my number 3 on the week. Moving on to number 4, against the Arizona Cardinals, my thumbnail quarterback of the week, Jameis Winston. I expect him to have a good game here. Again, the Arizona Cardinals, 3 out of the last 4 games have allowed 3+ touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks. And I expect Jameis Winston with his stud wide receivers, Godwin, Evans, O.J. Howard coming back this week, Ronald Jones being given the starting running back job. I expect this team to score a lot of points. Sure, Winston's capable of throwing interceptions, but I do expect them to be able to carve up this defense and for him to have a big week here in Week 10. He's my number 4 quarterback on the week. Moving on to number 5, we have Matt Ryan. That's right, Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan is slightly participating in practice. Do I expect him to play? Absolutely. I expect Matt Ryan to play. And if in fact he does, he has had a very good history against the New Orleans Saints. Sure, the New Orleans Saints are a great defense at times. This defense can really clamp up, force you to not be able to run the ball, which, to be honest, the Falcons haven't ran the ball very much this year, maybe 10 times a game. The rest of the time, they're throwing the ball 40 times, right? So majority of the time, we're seeing Matt Ryan have to come back late in games and throw the ball consistently, and he's very good at that. He's got the weapons to do so. In the last 2 meetings that he has faced the New Orleans Saints last season, the dude threw 7 touchdowns in 2 games, and I expect him to be just as good going into this coming week. It should be a higher scoring event between the 2 teams. It's an indoor stadium. Should be fun. I have Matt Ryan as my number 5, if in fact he does play, which I expect him to do so. Moving on to number 6, Russell Wilson, the MVP as of right now in terms of the NFL, a guy that has scored 25 touchdowns and only turned over the ball once through the air. I know he fumbled last week. That was Chris Carson's fault. Moving on. The whole thing is Russell Wilson is an incredible quarterback. Now the question remains, will they go ahead and approach this 49ers game like the Cardinals did last week? I have a thought in my mind that I'm thinking to myself, okay, when you go and you watch film as a head coach, and you see, okay, what did the Cardinals do that was so successful? Why did the Cardinals score more than any other team against this elite defense thus far this season? Why were they so good? Well, you think, okay, they spread them out. They had 4 wide receiver sets. Well, we have 4 wide receivers. We just signed Josh Gordon. We'll put Lockett, Metcalf, Gordon, David Moore out there. We'll have 4 wide. We'll sit Carson in the back. We'll spread out this defense, and we'll run the ball on them. We will find success. We will get down to the red zone. And where is Russell Wilson most deadly? This is a guy that has thrown the ball the second most times in the red zone thus far this season. This is a guy that within the 10-yard line, 10 yards and in, he has thrown 18 touchdowns. They're not running the ball in the red zone. They are passing the ball. Russell Wilson will be able to find value, and he will be good on Monday night against the 49ers. Despite how good that defense has been this season, they have struggled, and there are very visible gaps in that defense that you can target and you can pretty much exploit. And I expect them to do so. Also, the 49ers will be missing their best linebacker, Kawan Short. He is gone. Season-ending IR. Could be, a pretty big difference depending on what perspective you have. Moving on. Number 7, Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford, let's be honest. It's all about honesty, right? Exactly. Thank you very much. Matthew Stafford has been great. Comparatively to last year, it's a whole different quarterback. It's a whole different offense. But the thing that continues to stay pretty consistent with the franchise of the Detroit Lions is that they don't run the ball. They don't have a running back. Ty Johnson is not it. It's not it, Chief. And I really do believe this week against the Chicago Bears, the only way Matthew Stafford is going to help his team win is by heavily throwing the ball to Golladay, to Marvin Jones, to Hockenson, to Amendola. You have the weapons, and I really do believe the only way to win this game is for them to heavily throw this rock, and they're going to do so. They might be down in the game. Their defense can't stop the run. David Montgomery's coming against one of the worst defense against stopping the running back position. And I think Montgomery's going to have a big week. It's going to put Matthew Stafford in a hole because they're going to chew clock with running the ball. And he's going to have to come out. He's going to have to sling it. And I think he's going to be able to produce, in my opinion. He's too good of a quarterback. He's one of those gunslingers that I have my utmost faith within. Moving on. Number 8, Aaron Rodgers. Okay, we're not doing the commercial. Here we go. Aaron Rodgers plays against Carolina. I don't have him any higher because I do believe Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams will be dominating this game. But I expect him to be good. This is a quarterback that is turned... I want to say he flipped a couple pages in his book and he's gotten to the good chapters, right? The first couple chapters of this season were kind of boring for Aaron Rodgers. Then we got to the juicy stuff. And then in this last chapter, something unfortunate. It's a book. We're reading a book. And as of right now, looking at in chapter 10 of said book, against the Carolina Panthers, we're going to see a good week. We're going to see a good chapter, but we're not going to have a great one, right? We're setting up for a couple good ones. Right now, we're just, we're character building, a little bit of exposition, a couple BS, blah, 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 a couple other characters. We're going to build Aaron Jones this week. We're going to build Devontae Adams this week. We're going to build their characters. And then next week, Aaron Rodgers, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Aaron Rodgers is going to have a good week next week, maybe. But this week, I don't expect them to be incredible. I expect them to be good, though. Wow. Look at me, dude. I'm just, I'm on something right now, dude. Woo, baby. All right, moving on. Let's talk about my number 9 quarterback. By the way, I'm not on anything. All right, relax. I'm on my number 9 quarterback, Dak Prescott, playing against the Minnesota Vikings. I heard a couple birds say that there's a potential that Amari Cooper could be hurt. He had an MRI on his knee. If anything, it's probably not significant. It's probably just precautionary. He'll play this week. He'll be fine. And this offense will be perfectly fine. I just think Dak Prescott, Minnesota's defense, they've been pretty good in the past. Is there a potential that we see Dak Prescott have a 3-touchdown game like last week? Probably not. I expect something a little bit less, maybe a 2-touchdown game. That's why I have him at my number 9 spot, because he has the upside of it, but I'm going to go ahead and stay with this is his floor as of right now. All right, moving on to number 10, we have Kyler Murray playing against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Should be easy pickings. Now, Kyler Murray has played well in games where he shouldn't play well, and he's played bad in games where he should have played well. You know what I'm saying, right? Sometimes Kyler Murray steps up to the competition and then plays down to some competition. I don't know why. I just felt like that's been the case this year. But this is far too easy of a matchup. I really do believe with Christian Kirk finally back, Larry Fitzgerald's going to get more established, David Johnson's coming back, this offense is going to look different than it has in weeks past. And it's only for the better for Kyler Murray. Should be a good player this week. He is my number 10 quarterback on the week. Moving on to number 11, Jared Goff playing against Pittsburgh, coming off of a bye week. I expect Jared Goff, Robert Woods, that combo, Gerald Everett potentially, Josh Reynolds, Gurley if he somehow wants to wake up this week. I expect them to be good. I expect this offense to at least score 2 passing touchdowns, which is the baseline floor of a Jared Goff this week. Whether they're both to Cooper Kupp or not is not my concern. My concern is whether he produces, and I think he will against that defense. This defense has been good. Minkah Fitzpatrick is getting picks every single week in the last couple of weeks. The defense has played better. They have a good pass rush, but I do believe the Rams are going to be, listen, I'm a Rams fan. They're going to be good this week, but all things aside, he should be a good play. He's my number 11. Moving on to number 12, Josh Allen. Josh Allen's had some pretty easy matchups. He gets to play against the Cleveland Browns this week in Cleveland. Should be another easy one for him. I think Josh Allen sometimes, again, doesn't produce up to the level that we anticipate, especially against some of the matchups. He really did struggle against Philadelphia for a good amount of time, but he should be fine. Always has the ability to score extra points with his legs, and he should be a good running quarterback if, in fact, given the opportunity. But as of right now, he should be fine with John Brown, Cole Beasley being a touchdown fiend in the last couple weeks. This offense getting it going, Devin Singletary getting more established. That'll help Josh Allen more, because when you have a receiving back that you can just dump the ball off to and the guy's going to go for 15 yards, maybe a touchdown, it's only going to help the quarterback. That's why Cam Newton was so valuable last year, because all he had to do was give the ball to Christian McCaffrey. He would just get him value. Easy points. Anyway, moving on. Moving on to my number 13 quarterback, Daniel Jones, playing against the Jets. That's right. Daniel Jones playing against the Jets. You have Saquon. I don't care if Evan Ingram's out. That's perfectly fine. You have Golden Tate. You have Sterling Shepard. Those three is all he pretty much needs. He's going to have a big week. I expect him to be good. I don't expect him to be a top 12 quarterback, because I do prefer these other quarterbacks' talents over his. He is still a young, developing quarterback. And in fact, over time, he will get there. But as of right now, despite how easy the matchup is on paper, I don't want to go ahead and put too much on him right now. Not too much pressure in terms of, hey, If I put him at like 12, do I really want to start him over Josh Allen? No, probably not. I personally prefer the other quarterbacks. It's not that he has a bad matchup. It's just that everybody else has really, really good matchups, and they're already better quarterbacks than him at the moment. Moving on to number 14, Phillip Rivers. You know what I've always found interesting? Phillip spells his name with one L. Very interesting. Typically, Phillip Lindsay, you got two L's. But either way, Phillip Rivers sitting at my number 14 spot this week, playing against the Oakland Raiders secondary. I know Phillip Rivers has been pretty inconsistent this year in comparison to last year, a guy that had 13 games of 2+ touchdowns passing. Sure, we've seen Phillip Rivers be a lot better in other scenarios, but this week against Oakland in California, you don't got to travel very much. I expect it to be a very competitive, very fun back and forth game where Phillip Rivers is throwing touchdowns. And that's what makes him my number 14 on the week. Should be good to go against the Oakland Raiders. All right, moving on to number 15, Kirk Cousins. The Dallas Cowboys are relatively good on defense. They don't really give up much to opposing quarterbacks. If they're going to give you anything, it'll be to the running back position if you can gash them. With Adam Thielen out, with this offense being a little bit stagnant last week, there's very little implementation of Stephon Diggs. There could be a little bit of a hiccup this week. That's why I don't have Kirk Cousins so high. I have him at 15. He should be okay. Should be a decent quarterback. But again, this is a team that wants to run the ball. And without Adam Thielen there, they're probably going to run the ball first and foremost. And that's going to pretty much take some value away from Kirk Cousins. So he sits at 15. Moving on to my number 16 quarterback, the last quarterback on today's list. We have Jimmy Garoppolo playing against the Seahawks on Monday night. From what we've seen the Seahawks do defensively, they're not great defensively. They make some plays here and there. They score some touchdowns. They get after the quarterback a little bit. But every team does. As of right now, Jimmy Garoppolo coming off a pretty hot week, feeling good, 8-0. Should have a pretty good week here. I really do believe a guy like this, with the weapons they've surrounded around him, when you get Kyle Juszczyk back, when you get Joe Staley, your left tackle back, all-pro left tackle, this offense is going to continue to take steps in the right direction, and Jimmy Garoppolo should have another good week. Here in Week 10, really quickly, if in fact, Jacoby, let's say for example, Matt Ryan and Patrick Mahomes don't play this week. If they don't play this week, both of them, I would put Derek Carr and Jacoby Brissett probably within this 13 to 16 range and move up a couple guys. I'd probably move up Rivers and Daniel Jones and put Brissett and Carr somewhere in between 15, 16, 14, 13. I'd probably put them there. So for those of you looking, where do I play Carr? Where do I put Brissett? If in fact they play and there is no Mahomes. So it's pretty much that's my top 18 rankings. So that's my thought process on those guys. So if you were looking for that, there's your answer. Hopefully you guys check that out on the timestamps. Otherwise, if you watch this whole video all the way through, I do appreciate that. Thank you very much for watching today's video. If you like today's video, don't forget, click that like button. I really do appreciate that. And until next time, which will be my tight ends video later this afternoon, thank you everybody again for watching, and I will see you guys. Feels good.